The name itself was a weight. Crownguard, a word that had meant something specific in Demacia for generations. A family that stood between the throne and whatever threatened it, that produced soldiers and protectors, and people whose entire identity was organized around the idea of service to something larger than themselves. It was not a name you were born into casually. It was a name you were born into as a set of instructions. Her brother Garen had received his instructions early, selected for the dauntless vanguard at Bilderot. 12 years old, shaped into something that the word military only partially covered, a walking embodiment of Demacian ideals, the kind of person whose existence made other people feel that the values they claimed to believe in were real and achievable and worth the cost. Lexana Crownguard was told, from the time she was old enough to understand the sentence, that she was not Garen. She already knew. The question she was still working out was what she was instead. Subscribe if you are new. A new League of Legends story every week. This one is about what happens when the most dangerous thing in the kingdom is the truth. Demacia's relationship with magic was not complicated. It was simple, total, and built on a fear so old that the fear had become policy, and the policy had become law, and the law had become the organizing principle of an entire civilization. Magic was the enemy. Not a metaphor, not a rhetorical position. An actual enemy, treated with Misa Tristan. The same institutional seriousness as any foreign army, managed with the same systematic attention as any military threat. The Mageseekers existed to find magic users, contain them, and ensure that whatever power they carried did not become a problem for the people of Demacia. The system was thorough. The system was, by the standards of its own stated goals, effective. The system was also, from another angle entirely, a machine for destroying people. Lux grew up inside both of these truths simultaneously, which is a more difficult thing to manage than it sounds. On the surface, the daughter of a Crownguard family raised in a household that understood duty and service and the absolute primacy of Demacia's laws. Underneath, a child who had known from an early age that something lived in her that those laws were specifically Izrabad, designed to eliminate. She had felt it first at 14, in the Silver Forest, alone on horseback when a wolf pack emerged from the tree line with the specific organized intent of predators that have found something smaller than themselves. The panic moved through her faster than thought. And then something else moved through her, faster than the panic, a force she had no name for, a brightness that came from inside her hands and tore through the darkness between the trees, with enough intensity that the shadows Brshuachak became, briefly, daylight. The wolves ran. The forest returned to night. Lux sat on her horse in the aftermath and understood, with absolute clarity, two things at once. She had survived. And she was now exactly the kind of person that Demacia's laws said should not exist. She told no one. This was not a simple decision. It was a decision that required her to become, immediately and permanently, two different people occupying the same body, the Crownguard daughter who moved through the world of Demacian society performing all the expectations that name required, and the girl underneath who was doing something entirely different in the hours when Receiver Dulcine. No one was watching. She found a book. An Arcanum Prismaticum, dropped by a woman who moved through the world, with the furtive attention of someone who had been hiding for a long time. The notes inside described magic not as a weapon or a threat, but as something that existed in relation to the mind. That control was not about suppression, but about clarity, about understanding the thing, clearly enough that it responded to intention rather than to panic. She studied. She practiced. In secret. Always in secret. In the particular discipline of someone who Japan knows that discovery is not an inconvenience, but a catastrophe. The Mageseeker compound, changed her understanding of what was at stake. She had infiltrated it, not for dramatic purposes, but for practical ones. She needed to know more than the book could tell her. And the Mageseekers were the only institution in Demacia that studied magic systematically. What she found inside was not a research facility. It was a prison. People who had been caught carrying the same thing she carried, chained with petricite. Shackles, dosed with silence elixirs that destroyed their ability to speak, held in conditions that made it clear they were not considered people to be rehabilitated but problems to be contained. There was a child. Lux stood in the dark of the Mageseeker compound and looked at the child, and felt something shift inside her that did not shift back. This was not an abstraction, this was not a policy debate, or a philosophical position on the nature of magic in Demacia. This was a child who had been put probably in chains because they carried something they had not asked for and could not give back. She also found, in the Mageseeker records, a name she recognized. The specifics of what the records said about her own family's history with the institution, about who had been delivered to Demacian dungeons and by whose authorization, were the kind of information that reorganizes everything around them, not because it made her family monstrous. People did what the system told them to do, and the system was thorough. But its system made the system visible in a way that could not be unseen, and it placed her own situation inside that system with a precision she had previously been able to avoid. Her family's name had put people in those dungeons. She carried the thing those people had been put there for. She went home and said nothing. She was becoming very good at saying nothing. The first time she used her magic in open combat, she had not planned to. The northern border of Demacia was under pressure from Winter's Claw forces, a Freljordian siege that had pushed to the walls of a garrison and required a response faster than the formal military infrastructure could organize. Lux was there in a capacity that was supposed to be invisibile. Observational, she was not supposed to be in the fight. She was certainly not supposed to be in the fight. The fight with magic. But the wall was going to fall. And behind the wall were people. And the light was already moving through her hands before the rational calculation of consequences could catch up to what her O's body had decided. What came out of her was not a single focused beam. It was everything she had been carefully controlling for years, released in a moment of pure purpose, arcing across a battlefield in beams that reached as far as the eye could follow, that hit with precision she had not known she was capable of, that turned the momentum of a siege in a single, impossible moment. The soldiers who saw it called her the Lady of Luminosity. The story reached Demacia before she did. King Jarvan's anger was not the bureaucratic kind. It was personal, the specific fury of someone who has built a world on a particular principle and then watched that principle violated by someone whose name is supposed to stand for the principle's defense. Crownguard. Of all the principal summation families, of all the names that could have produced a magic user and had it become public knowledge, at a moment when the kingdom's stability was already under pressure. Her mother told her, without ambiguity, that she could not stay. This was not cruelty. It was the logic of the world they both lived in, spoken plainly by someone who understood that love and survival were not always compatible and had decided, in this instance, which one to prioritize. Lux was a danger to herself and to the family. The family was a Taban. Danger to Lux. Distance was the only solution the world currently offered. She went, not into hiding, or not exactly, into a version of existence that required her to keep two lives running simultaneously at all times, the official one, the Crownguard one, the one that moved through Demacian society performing the expectations of her name, and the real one, the one that was working towards something she could not yet fully articulate but could feel the shape of. She believed that Demacia could change, not quickly, not easily, not through any dramatic confrontation with the institution's deepest assumptions, but through the slow accumulation of evidence that magic did not have to be what Demacia's fear said it was, that a person could carry it and be exactly what Demacia claimed to. Value, that the category of enemy and the category of citizen were not as mutually exclusive as Kana. The law insisted she was building the argument with her own life. Every day she remained who she was loyal to. Demacia, committed to what it said it stood for, using the thing she carried not for destruction, but for protection, was a data point in a case she was building for a jury that did not yet know it was being addressed. It was, by any reasonable measure, an enormous and possibly impossible thing to be attempting. Lux had grown up being told she was not her brother. She was starting to understand what she actually was instead. Light, it turned out, did not require darkness to be impressive. It required only purpose. And purpose was the one thing, across all of it. The secret years, the compound, the border fight, the exile that was not quite exile, that she had never been short of. She moved through a kingdom that would destroy her if it fully saw her, using every tool available to ensure that the day it finally looked, what it saw was not what it feared. She was not done yet, not even close. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. Every week, a new League of Legends lore. The ones? Brr, that fight from the inside.